Dennis Cowan, welcome to Word Balloon. Man, as I was just telling you off the air, I haven't seen you since a Fort Wayne Appleseed con.
When was that? What year was that? Do you remember?
Probably at least 10 years, Dennis, if not longer.
It had to have been longer than that.
And forgive me, but it was funny because on the bill, it said it was going to be you and Derek Dingle. And now seeing and you had a white gentleman with you on the panel. And maybe I'm misremembering his name.
No, you're not. It was probably Pat Gabriel.
No, well, I don't know, man.
Who was the white guy on the panel with me?
I don't remember his name. And again, in the program, I thought it said Derek Dingle. And I'm like, all right. Derek. And I had never seen him. And then I saw the Milestone documentary. I'm like, all right, clearly the guy that I was on the panel with was somebody else.
Yeah, that was somebody else. That wasn't Derek. That's strange. I wonder who it was.
Yeah, he was an older gentleman. I don't know, man. And he's not in the documentary. So I don't know if it was just a buddy or, another thing. And we could talk about it later.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he was a wrestling friend of yours from back in the day when you were a manager heel.
Probably was. Like the people I knew in Fort Wayne, Indiana, like that whole area, because I lived there for like a period of time. Like I would travel from New York at the time to Fort Wayne and to Wabash, Indiana, right?
Okay, sure.
All those kind of places, right?
I'm a Chicago guy, so yeah, go on.
North Manchester, Indiana, right? That's where I used to stay. So we did a lot. There was a lot of wrestling. There was a lot of stuff going on, comic book wrestling. I was doing a lot of stuff. So the only reason why I probably even accepted the Fort Wayne, Indiana comic was because of my friends who lived there, and that's why I went. So the older white guy was probably a wrestler. It wasn't Ox Baker. It was probably Pat Gabriel. It was probably my friend Pat.
Okay, man. All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
And again, maybe I'm misremembering. I got to go back because I recorded the panel and have played it on the Word Balloon audio feed and everything.
That's crazy. I got to see.
So, yeah. Well, truly, Dennis, I mean, even Milestone aside, and we're certainly going to talk about Milestone, but I mean, God, my first awareness of you was working with Denny O'Neil on The Question.
Oh, yeah.
And seriously, man, that book just came at the right time for me, college age. Yeah. And it was just that great feeling, because as you know, and we're close enough in age, you hit your teenage years and stuff. You don't have money for comics. You try to date women and stuff, man.
Yeah, right.
And really the 80s was like, I read the Frank Miller Rolling Stone article about Dark Knight. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting.
Right.
And I walked in and I found you and O'Neil doing The Question.
Wow.
And it was great, man. I mean, truly. So you'll forgive me, but right off the bat.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that book meant so much to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it was I often describe that time working on that book with The Question, working with Denny. People like, didn't you have fun? I mean, it was Denny and you were doing this great work. But the reality was, for me, it was deadlines, sure. Trying to get the work done.
Yeah.
And Denny was awesome, but I always had the feeling that nothing I did ever made him really happy. But that's not really what it was. He was perfectly happy with it. That was just his manner. He was just an old school editor who did not heap out, and a writer who did not heap out loads of praise because you happened to turn your job in on time. Yeah. The way I often said, the way everyone thanked you from Mike Gold to Denny O'Neil is that they gave you another script. That's your thanks. And now I think about it for me. But thank you for the kind words on The Question. It was truly a labor of love. I still love that character.
Dude, and I'm friends with Bill Sienkiewicz, and
that's my man.
I'm well aware, my man, and that's why it is so great that you guys are as vital as you were back then. In today's world. Absolutely, man. And truly, let's get into Milestone because I saw the documentary. It was fantastic. And God, I loved your story about Bill Sienkiewicz. And if you don't mind me asking you now to talk about that just blew my mind. So if you would please, we
covered in the documentary. Basically, it was, it wasn't like our second phase. It was kind of our second phase, and we're trying to get more fan interest, more of the stores to commit to, selling Milestone. This is during the 90s. And there was a whole lot of resistance to what we were doing. There was a lot of support, but there was a lot of resistance. So one of the things we thought to do was to get Bill Sienkiewicz, my buddy Bill, to do a giant Milestone poster with all our characters on it. And we're like, if Bill Sienkiewicz does this poster, they're going to put this poster up because it's Bill Sienkiewicz. And he's like he was a superstar back then. He's a bigger star now, but he was huge then. So we did the poster and hardly anyone put it up. Well, some people did, but all the people we wanted to put it up did not.
Interesting.
And it wasn't because of it was a bad poster.
No, it wasn't.
They just weren't with what they felt was Milestone's agenda or DC's agenda at the time. But really, the agenda was just to tell good stories and to do good comic books that were a little different from what you were used to, and that caused people a lot of consternation, amongst the retailers.
Well,
sometimes a cowardly lot, a scared cowardly lot. Sometimes.
Indeed. Yeah, as Bruce Wayne would say, exactly a cowardly lot. Absolutely, man. Well, take me back even a few years before Milestone when Steranko came to you at a convention and kind of telegraphed.
I know. I tell people that story and they can't believe it. I've known Jim for a long time, because I got into business when I was about 14. So I had a chance to I met just about everybody, and I was working at Continuity, and everyone came through Continuity. So I got all the Wally Woods, hung out with Ray Morrow, and met Dick Giordano, who kicked me out of Continuity when I first got. Oh yeah. It's really quick. So I'm 14 years old. I'm in high school, going to the high school of art and design. I'm hanging out with my friends and stuff. Somehow I managed to wrangle an invitation to Continuity. Somebody I knew was probably going up there. So there I am, sneaked up there, got into Continuity. My friend probably left, and I'm still up there, like looking around like I'm supposed to be there. And Dick Giordano, who was Neil's partner at the time, was looking around and sees this little black kid up there. Who's this? And someone said, "Oh, that's not. Get him out of here. He's not supposed to be here. Get him out of here." So they kicked me out. It was awesome. It was the most awesome thing ever. I was like, Dick Giordano kicked me out. That was great. I got to see Dick Giordano. All I thought was I got to meet Dick Giordano, not the fact that they kicked me out. But I managed to, worm my way back in. So there you go.
That's amazing. Well, then when you get to, and before we get to the Steranko story, obviously then, Dick's the executive editor or editor in chief.
Yeah, he was the editor in chief during the Question years. At that time, I don't think he was the editor in chief of anything. He might have been working a lot at DC, but he was also with Neil at Continuity. And this is before they broke up. So, they started that together. At any rate, I'm at a comic convention, and this is the early 80s. I had already done the Question. I was that guy on the Question. And Jim Steranko had a room at the New York Comic Con. He had a whole room to himself.
Wow.
And the room had all his artwork because he always knows how to present his stuff and himself the best possible way. So he had his posters up. He had original pages up on the wall, his comic books. And under glass on a table, he had his original artwork. I don't know what the pages were, but they were fascinating. I just remember leaning over, looking at them. And then he walked over to me. And, "Hey, Dennis." I'm like, "Oh, hi, Jim." I was all happy to talk to him and everything. And I'm just looking at his work. And then we just start talking. He asked me what I've been doing. And I'm like, "Oh, I've been doing the Question. I've been doing this." I said, "What have you been doing?" He says, and then he starts explaining his story to me about how somebody at Marvel had approached him. I think it was Marvel. I think it was DC. Had approached him to create some black superheroes for them. And he said to me that it was an interesting thing that they asked him to do, but he didn't feel that he was the right person to do it. So he looks at me, puts his hand on my shoulder, like I've said, looks me in the eye and goes, "Do you know anybody who could create black superheroes for Marvel or DC? Like, you know anyone who could do any work like that? Because I'm not the right guy, but perhaps you know somebody." And he kept emphasizing me. And I didn't get what he was saying for the first minute. And then I got what he was saying. And it was like, holy moly. So I remember, I've often said this, I was different when I walked into that exhibit than when I walked out. When I walked out, my head was full of he had just lit something inside of me. And I was like, whoa, like who is creating black superheroes? Nobody's creating any black superheroes. So this is like 19, whatever I did the Question, 87, 85, whenever those years were. Yeah. So the idea kind of germinated in me for a couple of years until, we just had to do it. But it really did. A lot of that did really come from Steranko. Not the idea for Milestone, but just the genesis of doing black superheroes. And maybe this is something you should think about, Dennis. It's always curious where things come from. Indeed. It's not always the, well, my grandfather taught me to do black superheroes. No, that's not what happened. Yeah, my grandfather, Jim Steranko, told me to do black superheroes.
Absolutely, man. Well, and it's interesting. Before we get into the Milestone years,
Sure.
There were very few significant black characters, DC and Marvel. I love in the documentary, and in fact, I've seen that footage that they use for Black Lightning and Jack Harris over Trevor Von Eaton's shoulder as they're going over the first splash page and everything. Yeah. And thank God Trevor was working on it, but Tony Isabella writing it. Tony did a great job. It's interesting. Lamar's thought of, in his mind, the way Jeff Pierce talked in his Normal Guys and the way Black Lightning talked. I always felt Black Lightning wasn't as street as, say, Luke Cage.
Right.
And was just a guy that, he had the afro and he was a badass and everything and had the power.
He was bad enough, but he wasn't street like Luke Cage. No.
Yeah, man. I always,
that gave him some street cred. So he 100%. Could like.
Yes, man. Well, again, it was the 70s, man. It's all good. Funny. Come on. Absolutely, man. It worked for Jim Kelly in all those movies, man.
Right. It really did.
100%, man.
Kelly Afro. We all did. Shit.
And you'll forgive me, Den, because honestly, I've said this to Reggie as well when I've talked to him.
Yeah.
We're close enough in age, the three of us and stuff. I'm a couple of years younger, 57. And honestly, man, we saw the Kung Fu movies of the 70s.
Yeah.
And I think it ignited all of our imaginations, no matter the color and everything.
Yeah,
and that's why, like a lot of the 70s blaxploitation films, I've talked about this with Dave Walker, too. It's like
they informed all of us.
100%, man.
Sorry, they did.
Yeah. And
at least we got to see a whole bunch of black movies. Right? Absolutely. At least we got to see a whole bunch of black movies, a whole bunch of black actors doing whatever they were doing, from Sounder to Shaft to Three the Hard Way, Like we got
Cotton Goes to Harlem,
all of it.
Roundtree, Fred Williamson, all these people and everything.
Jim Kelly was my hero. When I met him, I nearly fucking fainted. And we did a kung fu karate pose together, and I was just done.
Fantastic! Done. That's so great, man.
I was done. Oh, my heart.
So forming the Milestone characters, and I feel incredibly fortunate that before he passed away, I met Dwayne a few times, Dwayne McDuffie. And especially at San Diego, and I had one word balloon conversation with him, and it was great. And he was such a sweet guy.
Yeah,
and you certainly know better and everything. But thinking about those 70s movies, did that have any sort of influence on what you guys were doing? And I mean this in the positive way. I don't mean just bow chicka wow wow and the like.
No. Of course it did.
Okay,
it did. Of course, those movies did. They informed a lot of what we did in our attitudes about stuff. Hardware would probably be the best example of something that came straight from that kind of attitude, that no bullshit, I'm gonna take the man on and fuck him up because he's kept me down so long kind of thing. That is straight from 70s attitude exploitation stuff. That really, Hardware is that guy. In the 70s, he would have been that kind of character. Just in the 90s, he could put on a superhero suit and do that same shit. And in 2000, in the 20s, we've even evolved it even further. So that stuff informed a lot of stuff, even from the titles of some of our stories to everything. Yeah.
Tell me
Dwayne and I were inspired by that stuff way before then anyway. When we were doing Deathlock, that was our shit.
Yeah. So. Great run, man. Absolutely.
So nice of you.
Oh, dude, seriously, man, Dennis, truly, and I certainly hope you get that kind of feedback at conventions and the like and stuff. I mean, you are, again, borrowing from one of your characters, you're an icon, man. You absolutely are, and truly,
that's nice of you.
Well, it's the truth, man, and really, it's and that's why it was so great having the creatives that you had getting together and making this thing. So, did it start? Did you contact Dwayne? I mean, how did the ball start rolling?
I contacted everybody. We go over in the documentary a little bit, but I can talk about it briefly. After the Steranko conversation, I germinated on the idea for a couple of years, jotted some stuff down. I may have even tried to start getting something going, kind of half-heartedly, but it really didn't really pan out. But then, 1990, I think it was 1990, San Diego Comic-Con. I'm there with my wife at the time, and I remember waking bolt up in bed, in the morning, And she's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I just have to do this. Like, I have to do this thing, this black superhero thing. It's killing me. And like, it had been just percolating. And like, I had done Deathlock at this time. So Dwayne and I had done Deathlock. We knew the kind of stuff that we could do together, and I had done The Question. I knew what I was capable of. Sure. So now it's the time to pull this trigger or never, So I got up that morning, got dressed, and, called Michael Davis, who was at this. We were all at the con because we were all, at the con for various reasons. And he met me down in the lobby of my hotel. I pitched him my idea. He told me I was nuts, but told me he also didn't want me to be stupid on my own. So he decided to join me. And then we're like, well, we need a writer. So we called Dwayne, who was at the con. And we met with Dwayne at San Diego Comic-Con and walked around the whole, you can walk around the con and then go to the back area where Roy's is and all that stuff. You've been to San Diego, right? And then
absolutely,
yeah, and then come back around from the Marriott and we did that loop. And that's when we started talking about Milestone and what we wanted to do. And I'm like, hey, Dwayne, we could do this, we could do that. We could just create all black superheroes and they could be badass and they could be this. And then with your help, we'll put together and Michael's co-signing and Dwayne is looking at both of us like we're crazy, so crazy. And I remember him just looking and just shaking his head, just like, you're fucking nuts. And I said, well, yeah, but this is a great idea, right? And I remember him just shrugging, just looking at me and saying, okay, I'll join you, but because you're crazy. And then Michael and I were very happy that Dwayne decided to get in on it. We needed a business guy because we didn't know anything about business, but I knew a business guy, Derek Dingle, who was my childhood buddy, who was running Black Enterprise. And if you run Black Enterprise, you got to know about business. That's a black business magazine. So we called Derek, who basically said the same thing, but he got on board, even though he had a whole great day job that he would have to give up if he really did this thing. And we also called Christopher Priest, Jim Owsley at the time.
Yep.
Right. And Jim, and between Jim, Dwayne, myself, Derek, and Michael, we started coming up with the whole Milestone universe, all of us together. Christopher Priest certainly made a big contribution that he doesn't really get enough credit for, but he should get a lot.
Tell us more, man, because
he did a lot. He did a lot. I mean, all that stuff a lot of stuff, how Static was shaped, a lot of stuff, how Icon, I don't know how much he had with hardware, but I know he had a lot to do with Icon and just shaping the whole universe, especially the city of Dakota and all the things in it, all that important stuff. A lot of that's Christopher Priest putting up all that stuff together.
That's great. And it was also great.
He was supposed to be our editor-in-chief. Christopher Priest was supposed to be that guy, not Dwayne. Dwayne was going to be one of the writers.
Sure.
When Christopher Priest decided, I'm going to go over at DC, work as your liaison there, be an editor there, that's when Dwayne moved into that position. But he didn't want to. He didn't want to be editor-in-chief. He wanted to just write. So reluctantly, he stepped in and did it. And he was brilliant, of course.
100%, man. But also, I would imagine learning on the job as far as being an editor versus being the great writer that he already was.
Yeah.
And,
but he was extremely smart. Extremely smart man.
And again, forming this company, and especially at that time, the Image guys around the same time they were doing their thing, but
they were about a year earlier, so they were definitely an inspiration, right?
Did you ever talk to them about it?
Yeah, of course. Jim Lee and Rob and Todd and all those guys and Mark Silvestri.
Yeah,
they were a big influence on what we did because if they could do it, then a bunch of black guys could do it, right? Why couldn't we? And in fact, they were very enthusiastic about what we were doing, very encouraging. And they were the ones that introduced us to the world. People don't know this, but I think it was like 1991 because a year had passed and now we're at the convention. Or 92, Image, those guys brought up Milestone. We would like to introduce the guys from Milestone, Dennis Cowan, Derek Dingle, Dwayne McDuffie, Anthony Davis. And then we took their place at the podium. It was really like that. So they were always big, supporters of what we did, and we've always loved what they did. I'm a big Rob Liefeld fan. I think he's great.
I think, man, I love having him on the show, and I appreciate his energy and his ideas and stuff.
He's a force, and people may not like it or whatever, but that's my man. He's great.
He's genuine.
It's hard to do what we do. It's hard to do what we do. And then it's hard to be a guy like him who's creating characters, doing his own books, and doing this stuff. Please.
I'm with you, man. Respect. No, I'm not. And I love that he's out there doing his own podcast and giving his, POV of everything that happened and what's going on. I should do that.
I should start a podcast. I have a point of view.
Dennis, let me vote for that as well. And I'm sure Mike Schelling, who's watching us, is nodding in agreement.
Michael Schelling's like, no, don't do a podcast.
Were there other suitors for Milestone other than DC in terms of facilitating what you wanted to do?
What happened was after we made our deal with DC, several different publishers reached out to us wanting us to milestone their characters.
Interesting.
Yeah. And one of them, from the House of Ideas, went it so far, and I have to dig this stuff up because it exists. We redid Shang-Chi. We redid Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. We redid a bunch of that stuff and gave it that whole treatment. And for some reason, I don't know what happened, but it didn't work out where we could do it, or whether they lost it. I don't know what happened, but yeah, those whole Dwayne and I busted our ass working on stuff for Marvel. We were blown away. They wanted us to do it, but they did, and we did, and we developed a whole bunch of stuff, like a whole new line.
I have some questions from people that submitted them.
Sure.
And Asham wanted to know, he loves Hardware in particular, always felt it was visually distinctive. He was curious what influences went into the design.
Of Hardware?
Yeah.
Here's the influences that went into design, because I designed all the characters at first, right? For the first Milestone 1.0.
Okay.
I was looking at Jack Kirby. All I was looking at was like Jack Kirby stuff. I didn't want to see anyone else. I couldn't even think of any other character designers that I even liked at that time. So everything you see from Icon and Hardware and all the characters, I was just trying to imagine, what if Jack Kirby had designed these and what would he do? So like for Hardware, especially, he has his headgear. I was thinking about Light Ray, and I was thinking about the kind of thing that he wears, right?
Yes.
But how he shows the face.
Yes.
Framed. I'm like, well, how can I do something like that? The different kind of armor he wears, the big bulky, I was just thinking about what would Kirby do with something like this, and try to make it my poor imitation of that. So all the characters like that, from Icon with his circular thing, with all of it, with the bands, in odd places, not where they usually are, but where Jack Kirby would put them, which would be on the forearm, right? It wouldn't be on the wrist, it'd be on the forearm. Just things like that. The circles, just the things that the design motifs he would use. Jack Kirby's had a big influence on me.
That's amazing. And this is what I love. And I've heard this as well about actors who admire certain style, but because physically they're different, it comes out differently.
Right. It'll always come
certainly
out.
Your drawing style is very different from Jack's.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought of that through line until you just said that about him.
Now that I said it, that's all you're going to see when you see what you want.
Yeah, but that's great, man.
You're Jack Kirby, It's the same place where Rob Liefeld gets his inspiration from.
Well, yes. Yeah, and with him, it's the energy.
Yeah.
I always feel like he really tapped in, just like, you go back to those Simon and Kirby years as well.
Right.
And it's just like Jack was just this dynamo and projected that in his art and everything. That's cool.
That's always what I wanted to do.
Well, and I understand the immenseness of what you're talking about with Hardware and Icon, for that matter.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, man, because and I was already, a full adult. I'm glad that Rocket and Static, in particular, and Hardware as well. Hardware is a younger character.
Hardware was an older character.
Oh, excuse me.
They were
young, I guess
teenagers.
And you're right. Shame on me. I was thinking of, though, you're right, because we just discussed Hardware. But Hardware and Icon were the ones that I did gravitate more to as an adult. And I'm so glad that, we'll get into the Static cartoon, but I loved that in Young Justice, Rocket and Icon were part of the mix and everything. Yeah. And it was so cool seeing animated Icon and everything.
Yeah, it is. It is. We love that. We love all that. Well, Greg Weisman is just great. And he's always treated the characters, the creator of the show has always treated the characters with respect and a lot of love. So
there are things in flux right now with Warner Discovery, HBO Max. We all read the Batgirl headline, and I'm really relieved to hear that while Batman Caped Crusader is not going to be on HBO Max, that it is still being made and that it will be sold to other platforms and things like that. In the Milestone documentary, I think Reggie mentioned that there was an animated movie in the works. Is that still moving forward?
Yeah, we're still doing it.
Cool.
We're still doing it. So as far as I know, I know what everyone else knows as far as all the news is concerned. But, from looking at my emails and seeing the kind of work we're still doing, it's still going ahead.
That's excellent. And it's funny, speaking of Icon, another question that I got, any thoughts on live action and adaptations lately, the tendency to race swap? For instance, they've talked about maybe Michael Jordan being a Superman and everything, in lieu of more original properties like Icon, for example. Any thoughts?
I have two thoughts. One, you can't have enough black superheroes. So if there's a black Superman, great, whatever. That's awesome. Black Spider-Man, black Batman, all the black.
Right.
Things.
Sure.
I don't know if it's race swapping or if it's just a different interpretation of the character. These people aren't real, so.
You're right.
You can't, you're going to race swap fake people, so.
Well, and Superman, an alien from another world.
Yeah, so he's an alien anyway. He's not white. He's just, he just made himself white. He's probably green. So, that being said, I don't have a problem with all of it. Now, that being said, I always prefer original characters. And my thing is, Black Superman's awesome. Icon is even more awesome. Black Superman, great. Icon is a very special character and it means something different than a Black Superman would, right? Because he's original, he's real. He's got enough of that Superman stuff within his DNA to make it great, but he also has a lot of the African American stuff that is endemic to us that makes him special and different. So I'm in favor of all black superheroes, from Black Panther to Spider-Man to Batman to Superman, but I also love our original characters, and that's what we did at Milestone. That's what we're really good at. So, I would love to see that on screen.
There was that, and again, I'm going to refer to the documentary.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, everybody, it's on HBO Max. It's outstanding, and it really does give the Milestone story. And it's so great that Dwayne, there's so much great footage of Dwayne speaking as well, given that we lost him a few years ago. So that documentary, I'm assuming, or was it archival footage, must have been in the works for a long time.
I think they worked on it for about a year.
Oh, okay. So it was archival footage, I guess. Of Dwayne.
Yeah, it was archival footage in terms of like all that back stuff with Dwayne. It had to be archival. He's no
of course.
And, you saw the old footage with Michael Davis and myself and all the stuff from the 90s and all when we all had hair and stuff like that. So, yeah, but the actual documentary, I think, has been in production for about a year, maybe a little bit more.
It turned out great. And I'm so glad that you guys went to Reggie Hudlin early, wanted him to be part of it from the beginning.
Totally true. And he turned us down. Yeah, couldn't do it. Turned us down.
Well, and as he said, I mean, hey, man, House Party, amazing. Boomerang, amazing. So the guy's riding a high wave, and it's like, again, I got to negotiate my filmmaking.
But he missed out on Icon and Rocket and Static. So. But now, he's with us now. So the circle is complete. It's like Ron Wood joining the Rolling Stones. Eventually, he was going to join. Eventually, it was going to happen, right?
I'm with you. I got to ask you. I've got a big radio background, and I see the guitar, but I also see the CD equivalent of like a gold record or whatever. So tell me what you got back there, man. Oh, there it is. It is a gold record. Wonderful.
It's my gold record. Yeah, really. It's my gold record. Let me see if I didn't know you made a record. That's it. Oh, I'm so glad you're doing this, Dan. It's fantastic. We all want to know. I'll even zoom in on you. I did not make the record. I made the cover.
Oh, okay. And for whom?
So this is presented to Dennis Cowan. I spelled my name wrong. To celebrate Liquid Swords. So I did an album cover for the Jizza, and this is an actual album cover but it was also used for the CD and the interior artwork on the. They used my sketch. That one on the CD itself, that drawing, that black and white drawing.
Yeah,
that was a sketch I did to show him what I wanted to do.
Wow.
And he said, "Why don't we just use that?" I'm like, "You can't use that. That's just a rough sketch." See if we can see it. There it is.
I'm hip. No, that's great, man. All right.
He's like, no, dog. We're gonna use that. That's dope right there. And there you go.
That's beautiful, man. You know, and again, you and I are from that era where, you know, albums were, as you see the gold album there and everything, the vinyl years when, God, and so many great artists that come from comics had the opportunity to do album work and interior work. And I was talking to Joe Satriani, the wonderful guitarist.
Oh my God.
And
I would have died.
I'm like, he was amazing. And really, man, I go back to the 80s with my radio DJ and music career as far as broadcasting goes. But I'm like, you know, you didn't need drugs. You would slip in your earphones and just look at that
anyway.
Look at that art, man.
Well,
and you were
great. You were good. Yep. It's totally true.
So that's great, man. I didn't realize. And the guitar, is that like your own guitar? Is that
one of my guitars?
I didn't know if you had somebody autograph it.
You can't see it, but there's like 4 other guitars. 5 other guitars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guitars in here. So, yeah.
Very interesting. You know, I wonder too, and especially given that people like Phil Lamar got involved with the static cartoon and everything, and your long association with animation. Now that audio drama has really, you know, kind of found new life. I mean, I love old time radio, and I'm so thrilled with the modern
radio. I'm such a fan. Richard Diamond, Private Detective.
Yes, you know, Blake Edwards. Blake Edwards made Richard Diamond. I mean, it's it was
genius writing. It was great. It was clever and witty. You know, I love all that stuff. Sam Spade, Detective.
I just told someone they didn't know that Howard Duff on Suspense.
Howard Duff
did that sequel to the Maltese Falcon. It's called The Candy Tooth.
So great, the Candy Tooth Caper or whatever it was. Yes. Don't tell me. I listened to all that stuff. And it was great. And all the characters are in it. They made a comeback for that. It was great.
Yes, it's a sequel to the Maltese Falcon. Everyone can find it on YouTube, and you just search for the Candy Tooth. You'll find it and everything. But I was wondering, like for Milestone, I think
we love to do audiobooks, and there's a lot of talk about. You know, that's part of what we plan to do. There's definitely, you know, Warner Brothers has a big audiobook component, and we want to be right in it. Let's see how everything works out in these next couple of months, you know, with all the changes going on. But that's definitely that was definitely part of the plans.
So how does Ally work into the mix of what you're doing? Yeah, explain.
Yeah, Ally's great. Ally's been our partner. It's Ally Bank, and they're just called Ally, and they teamed up with us to help us out. They saw they liked the Milestone program. They liked what we did, and they wanted to associate with us to help us get our message out and to get their message out. You know, their message is they're an inclusive company. They do bank in Black neighborhoods. They do, you know, support the community. They really are an ally that way. And they wanted to. They saw our values aligning with theirs. So they helped fund and helped present the Milestone Initiative, right? Where we got all the kids. We did a nationwide contest and got like hundreds of submissions from writers and artists. And out of them, we picked 12 artists and 12 writers.
So great.
And put them through a whole course for the Milestone Initiative, because our whole thing is giving back and getting people who don't normally have the opportunity to get into comics. You know, it's not easy. It's not like you need a whole lot of connections and stuff like that, but it's a tough industry, and it's hard to even be noticed. So if you have the skills and you have someone showing you the right way to do things, you'll just have a leg up, you know, and we're very interested in giving people a leg up in this industry. You know, there's 2 schools of thought, right? There's I did it the hard way, so now you got to do it the hard way. And then there's a school of thought I did it the hard way, and I don't want you to have to go through it. That's my school of thought. I don't want you to have to go through the same thing I did. So let's set it up so that maybe you don't have to, you know, and there's a different way.
Who were your teachers? Because always beautiful art, but storytelling is such a unique skill. And I'm assuming that's one of the things you're passing along to the 24 new people and everything.
Or the instructors, like we'd love to pass that along, but it's really the instructors from the Kubert School, people like Amy Chu, Tom Mandrake.
Hey, that's great. Sure.
You know, they all worked with the students and did stuff. You know, they looked up to me a lot, but there were a lot of people who did a lot of hard work with those kids. So storytelling to me is the most important thing. It's more important than doing pretty pictures. It's more important than anatomy or whatever. Telling a story that's clear, that you can understand and you can follow is the hardest thing to do, but it's the epitome of the art form. So I've always emphasized storytelling, but that was drilled into me. My teachers, this is going to sound crazy because I've had such a blessed life, but in high school, I went to the High School of Art and Design. I had an illustration teacher called Mr. Lynch. He was also my homeroom teacher. He didn't really teach us much about stuff. But there was another teacher who taught illustration, and his name was Bernie Krigstein.
Wow.
And I knew that name from the EC comic books and that story Master Race. I knew who that was. But a lot of the students who took his class did not have any idea who Bernie Krigstein was. So I would take his class. I got his illustration class one year, and then I stayed. When I wasn't supposed to take it during my lunch, I would go back and just do illustration stuff with Mr. Krigstein. Because I wanted him to show me his comic book stuff. And what he did, he's a master story. Like he was the guy, Bernie Krigstein. And I would show him my comics. He was so funny. He was so patient with me. I would show him my comics and he would look at them and make criticisms. He never would talk about his own. Never.
Interesting.
No, never. Didn't want to talk about his comic book stuff, but would gladly look at mine and give me pointers and do this and do that and focus on this. And he was very encouraging. But that was my high school teacher. Was Bernie Krigstein. And then from there, you know, I'm in high school, but I'm at continuity. So it's Neil Adams and all the people up there, Joe Barney and Joe Desposito. These are names that are not really common in comics, but these are the guys who helped me. Carl Potts.
Sure, Carl Potts.
You know, Carl Potts is he worked with me. Everyone came through there. That's where I met Steranko. That's where I met Wally Wood.
Wow.
That's where I met Gray Morrow. I would go up drinking with Gray Morrow and a guy named Ed Davis at Gray's house in New Jersey. Like, that was my life. I was really hanging out with these guys all the time. I was like, it was like, you know what, now I think about it, it's like being a kid hanging out with rock stars. You don't even, you hanging out with them, but this is your life. You don't even realize how lucky you are, though you kind of do know how lucky you are. You know? So,
I get it, man. No, that's
so
amazing.
Like Neil Adams. And then after Neil, I ended up working for Rich Buckler.
Sure. I have a deck flock from Rich Buckler.
I love Rich. Rich was my guy. And Rich is the one who really taught me, who drilled it in my head about storytelling and comics and how to make comics, how to make your deadlines, how to do all. Rich caught an unfair rap, but master comic book artist, master. I ended up doing Deathlock and the characters that he did because of Rich. You know, and I remember before I ever met him, Deathlock was one of my favorite characters, and the Black Panthers he did with Don McGregor, Killraven, and you know, all Killmonger and all that stuff.
Killmonger, yeah.
That was my stuff. That was my stuff. So then I got to work with Rich, the guy who did that. I was in heaven.
That's amazing.
So yeah, Rich taught me, Neil taught me, all of them.
And I'm aware that both DC and Marvel will do chalk talks where, you know, guys like Klaus Janson or Chaykin.
Yeah, John Buscema used to do it back in the early 80s. John Buscema used to do these life drawing storytelling classes. They used to hold them in a hotel room in New York, and I would go. So I get to see John Buscema like talk about comics and stuff. I sit in the back row along with all us. It was all professionals. Right. It would be me and it would be Carl and it'd be, you know, all the no people up the street taking the course from the master. You know, it was amazing. It was amazing. But they did that kind of stuff all the time back then. It's great to hear that Amy's been involved as well, Amy Chu. And then again, like you guys said, this is the wonderful thing that you're passing it on to the next generation and everything. And they're learning beyond their basic, you know, art skills and everything. Right. And again, they're all talented kids. They're all great. They just needed to have the opportunity, you know. So, are they introducing ideas for more expansion of characters for Milestone? Well, part of the assignment was to do stuff like that. or take existing character, or make up your own character, or do whatever. That was part of their curriculum. So, but they're not bringing a whole lot of new ideas to Milestone per se. We didn't want them for that.
Okay.
We want them to work in the industry. And if they end up working for Milestone, that would be awesome. Like I told them, I wanted to hire all of them. Right then. If I could, I would have.
I'm hip. Well, I hope that as Warner Discovery figures itself out in the DC publishing arm, that you are able to, expand it and thrive, because truly we were so thrilled a couple years ago that the stars finally aligned and Milestone was coming back.
Yes. Yeah.
And it took a while, obviously, for these first issues to finally come out and everything. Can I ask about the Wilderness years? Because again, Static made such a Static Shock, the cartoon. I've got friends that, as you guys see in the documentary, they had no idea that Static was a comic book character, but they love the cartoon.
Right.
And that's wonderful and stuff. So, was it, and I don't want you to speak out of school in terms of whatever partnership and whatever relationship Milestone has with DC. So I'm not looking for dirty laundry, but were there legal entanglements in terms of the possibility of bringing Milestone back in comic book form? Was it the collapse of the market that was being experienced in the late 90s? What kept Milestone from coming back? It
was all those things. It was all those things. It was everything you just mentioned. It was a collapse of the comic book industry. It was the fact that we broke up. I wasn't there. Dwayne and Derek were trying to do it by themselves, basically with Joe Illidge. It was almost an impossible thing to do. They're up at the DC offices trying to get these books out and not getting a whole lot of help from DC or anyone. Eventually that whole thing just kind of collapsed under its own weight. The Wilderness years were the Wilderness years for some people, but not for all the people. Like the Wilderness years for us was Static Shock TV show. After Milestone stopped publishing, we had a TV show on for 4 years.
Yeah.
And
unheard of for most cartoons.
Yeah. And Static was a big hit, very popular, high ratings, but no toys. So they couldn't sustain it without. They couldn't sustain the show without having toys, and they weren't willing to make any toys to help sustain the show. It's a whole different thing. Yeah, man.
No, that's. I've tried to explain
the early 2000s. So, so we did that, and then after the show, there was some talk about reviving Milestone, but one thing or another would get in the way of doing that. But not seriously. Dwayne and I collaborated on stuff that was outside of Milestone. I was at BET as an executive.
Yes.
And I started the Black Panther TV show, animated show. That was me, doing all that stuff.
I'm hip. I watched it. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. And I wanted to work with Dwayne. And I was doing a project up there, and we brought him in, to work with me. So Dwayne and I were working together on that stuff. And we also worked together on the Static TV show, when we were doing that. So there was still stuff going on, but not Milestone stuff.
I'm hip.
Reggie was having a party to celebrate his website, the opening of his website. And I think it was in August or something. I'm pretty much sure it's in August. And the week that he was going to have it is the week that Dwayne died. He was supposed to be there at the thing. So that turned into kind of a celebration of Dwayne's life, right? And, we talked about things then. And then there was a memorial service for Dwayne a couple of weeks after that at Warner Brothers on the Warner lot. They gave him a real great send-off.
That's great.
And so all the executives were there. People from DC were there. People from Warner Brothers Animation. Dwayne's mom was there. His wife. Everyone was there. I spoke a little bit. But that's when I was with Derek, and Michael Davis was there, but I was with Derek and Reggie, and we just looked at each other and said, we got to bring this thing back at that place.
Wow.
And because it's too, and maybe it been the speech or whatever that I gave. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was a catalyst to start again. And that was in 2012, but it took 5 years, 6 years for it to really happen. 2012, 2013, 2014, you're trying to get it up. Then various legal things happened, because once you start anything like this, people just jump up and all of a sudden it gets a little crazy. So we had to work our way through all of that, to bring this, to get it to a point where DC could comfortably publish these books and we could, comfortably produce them for them without the threat of anything happening. That's all been cleared up, and that's why, we got into business. So that's the wilderness years. That's what happened. It wasn't inactivity on our part, but it was an inactivity as far as Milestone was concerned, and for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Understood. And again, and I'm so glad you brought up your time at BET. I wanted to ask you about the Boondocks.
Yeah.
Because I had the opportunity to talk to Andrea Romano about directing it. Yeah. And my God, and I love that smile, Dennis, because truly I love that show so much. It was the right edge and fearless, just like the comic strip was, but in a lot of ways even more so, and truly brilliant comedy. And brilliant Regina King, so great.
Regina's great. She played both parts, I remember during table reads and stuff, I would sit next to her and she would ask me to hold her hand. I know, right? Hold my hand. Why? Why you want me to hold your hand? Because I'm nervous.
Aww.
She was so sweet. So, and I would hold her hand, and I didn't need to. She was great, but she was doing both parts, which is hard, So, I did the Boondocks. That really started when I was on Static.
Okay.
And Aaron and Reggie had been trying to sell that show all through town, and they weren't getting any bites. But I realized that they weren't, because they didn't have anything to really show except for the strip. So what I did, unbeknownst to Aaron, but Reggie knew about this, was I took the strip while I'm working at Warner Brothers, and we produced an animatic, which is basically a limited moving animation, using Huey and Riley. I think Phil Lamar helped us out with the voices. I think Andrea may have directed. I don't know who directed the voices, but we did a whole thing and put it all together, and with Huey and Riley, and probably just took one of the strips and animated it, and then showed it to Aaron, who looked at it really hard because he didn't know what we were doing. He's like, what is this shit? And then ended up laughing and loving it. And that's what they took. That's what Reggie and Aaron took around to the different studios, and Sony ended up biting. So then I ended up producing the Boondocks over at Sony. But that's why, because I kind of got that whole thing started for him.
That's fantastic, man. And I'm going to talk to Phil in a few weeks, and Reggie hopefully as well.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear more about it, because that is such a great.
Yeah, Aaron's a talented guy, genius, really, really a special talent. Really is. That was great working on this show.
And listen, Dennis, we as a society, we got a long way to go, and sadly, the last couple of years showed us that as much as we thought things were getting better, things are still shitty. But from a creative standpoint, the various platforms that are out there now and stuff, it does seem like, and again, I've been reading comics since the 70s. It is great to see that you can count more than on one hand the significant creators of color and women as well. And don't get me wrong, it always can and should get better, and certainly you guys are doing that with the Milestone Initiative. But would you say that in the last 10 years, it seems like things have gotten a lot better? Not just the big two, but again, the opportunity to self-start. You guys were taking a big risk back in the 90s and stuff. But yeah, your thoughts on
we didn't have self-publishing. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have online comics. We didn't have things you can download to your phone. We didn't even have cell phones like that. So that was all a whole different time, if anyone can imagine it. I think that in the last 10 years or so, things have gotten better. There's more creators of color. I see a lot of black female creators, artists, and writers, which I love.
Absolutely, man.
That's awesome. I see a bit of a change in terms of the talent, and I see some in terms of the characters. There are some original characters. For me, it also looks like, okay, we're going to do a black Flash and we're going to do a black Batman and we're going to do a black Superman. That's like, to me, that's not the hardest way to go. It's not easy because you got a lot of fans who don't like any of that, but there's other ways to accomplish that too. We've talked about that before with original characters, but there has been a change. There has been more. There's more characters and more creators of color, men and women. A lot of LGBTQ, comics and creators, which I think is awesome. I love how Asian creators are stepping up and don't want to hear no bullshit. They want to do their comic books, the way they should be done. All of that is great. I would like to think that Milestone had a lot to do with, or maybe a little bit to do with, of this current crop of energy. But it's great to see.
Well, and again, you came at a time, and I think you showed that it was possible in the same way that the Image guys did in general for what they were doing as well. So no, that's true. The speculation period, was that a boon to Milestone? Did it not matter? Did it? Yeah, I mean, again, I could tell from
it did, because we try to you try to do the special covers and you try to do all the shrink wrap things we did back in the 90s for all that stuff. Ultimately, I never gave that kind of stuff much thought.
Okay.
I didn't personally like the collector's market, the collectability of it, because once I started drawing comic books, I stopped collecting them. I really did. I have tons of comics, but my relationship with them became a lot different once I started working in the industry.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So I never got into the collectability, the die cut covers for myself, and this would be cool if we had this. No, I just didn't think of that. But fortunately for us, there were people around us who did. Okay. So, we were able to get into some of that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the quality of the book. It's not the die cut cover.
Of course. No, I felt the same way, man. I mean, to me, it's like, no, I want the story. I really want the story, please. Right. So no, I get that. By the way, your friend Warren Drummond wanted to let you know that he feels your style is unorthodox.
And he's quite effective. Yeah, so funny.
He's a great guy. He got me Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek to come on my podcast. I'm like, Warren, cool. Can't thank you enough, Warren. My God. That's so Warren. Yeah. And I know he's a big martial arts, he is.
Well. He's my martial arts buddy.
One thing about and I was hoping for clarification of this regarding the documentary, the Static 25 issue, there was an editorial that was put in there. Now, did that come from DC? Who wrote that editorial? Dwayne. Okay. And because you guys are like, well, we didn't see that coming. So was this?
We didn't see it coming because basically the way we worked was we would do the mechanicals for the book at Milestone. And the mechanicals at that time was the full book, all the paste up, all the stuff done on it. It wasn't digital. It was literally a physical package of the book that they would photograph. Editorial page included. So we would send that to DC. They would approve it, send it back to us for the final whatever notes they have, whatever. And sometime between when it got shipped to them and when it got back to us and when it went back out to the printer, it had a different editorial in it than the one that was sent to DC for approval, because they never would have approved that one.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Because this was the issue, everybody, and again, you'll see it in the documentary, Static 25, Static is having sex. That's a very, and it didn't, I believe DC when they said it, and it really didn't have to do with color. They were just gun shy. I think
I believe in too. And I believe in them. When you're young, I mean, we're all in our 30s and stuff, and you're tired, you're overworked, your ego is all involved. You're not even thinking clearly about what the reality of some stuff is. I would only attribute it to that, not to any kind of evil intent. But they never had a policy of condoms on their covers or showing teenage sex. They never did anything like that.
Right.
At all. In all their public, they never did anything like that. So for us to do it, had nothing to do with race as much as it had to do with that subject matter that they never did with their comic books on the cover, not on the inside, but on the cover.
Yes.
So that turned into a big issue. Now that I think about it, it may have been more issues than that. That may have been the thing that was the catalyst. But I think everyone was overworked, stressed out, tired, burnt out. There was a lot going on. To do what we did at that time took a lot of work. It took a lot.
And you were a lead.
You can see why bands burn out and people, collaborators burn out, because it's an intense period of time, and anything that lasts more than 5 or 6 years, you should applaud them, because it's hard. It's hard to keep people together, going in one direction, doing one thing.
I saw it in broadcasting. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, believe me, I know. Well, I'm glad that again, and sadly, the catalyst for you guys coming back might have been the loss of Dwayne, and I'm sorry Dwayne can't be around to be part of this now. But I'm glad that it has fueled this verve to get the band back together. And again, you guys are still vital. And I forgive me, but I've said this. Actually, Priest and I just talked a day ago, and we were talking about ageism, and it's like, the thing that everybody doesn't understand is it's like ageism just, that's the negative. The reality is it's experience. Right. And that's the great thing. You, Reggie, everybody involved with Milestone now, Joe, Joe's doing heavy metal and everything now. Yeah. And God bless him. I'm so happy. Yeah. But that's the thing, man. You guys all have experience. You know what you're doing now. Yeah. And I would imagine that, are there any quantifiable things you could say, all right, we made our mistakes or choices in the 90s. We're going to do them differently moving forward now?
Is there anything like that? You know what? Yeah, but it'd be in terms of more business than artistically.
Understood.
It would be how we move the company and what we do. That would be the major difference between now and the 90s. So I can just leave it like that. That would be the major thing. But as far as approach to stuff, I think I work smarter. If I had some of the knowledge now, if I had some knowledge then that I have now, I would have worked a lot smarter, and I killed myself unnecessarily. But in your 30s, that's what you do.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm with you. No. So moving forward, beyond publishing and stuff, are you guys in Milestone your own, masters of your own destiny in terms of exploiting things? Like I said, audio or
Milestone is its own company. It's wholly owned by myself, Derek, and Reggie. It's not part of DC. We're not owned by DC or anything like that, but we are partners with DC and Warner Brothers, and they've been great partners with us. So, we'll continue to honor that as long as we possibly can, because it's worked out very well so far.
Well, we're thrilled, man. We're thrilled it's back, and we can't wait to see what's next. Dennis, I hope we'll have an opportunity in the near future to have a new talk, because there's so much to talk about with you.
Yes.
And oh, that's so great. Well, I see the smile, so you must be having.
We'll do it. We'll set it up. Just let Michael Shelling know.
100%.
I'm on. We could do another hour. No problem.
Absolutely. Oh, that'd be great, man. Well, and again, are there announcements coming? New York is coming up. New York Comic-Con. Are there any? Or again, and believe me, I know it's above our pay grades. But is it more about Warner and Discovery kind of figuring everything out?
Well, Warner and Discovery have to figure out has nothing to do with me and far beyond my control what's going to happen there. If people want to see, we're still publishing books. We have the Icon of Rocket just came out, the hardcover. We have coming out, Static Shadows of Dakota is coming out. We got a lot of stuff. And what we have planned will blow people's minds. You'll be like, I can't believe they're doing that. It's like that. So we're producing books. I've got covers that I'm working on right now for our season 2 stuff. So it's happening. It's happening. We just have to see what happens with our corporate bosses, and just keep plugging away until then. In the meantime, I will not be in New York Comic-Con, but I will be at the Long Beach Comic-Con.
That's great. And of course, the McDuffie Awards there and everything.
I will be at the Long Beach Comic-Con. Next weekend, whenever weekend.
It's either next week or the following week. I know, September, early September.
And then I'll be at Memphis I'll be in Memphis at the end of the month, speaking at the university, and then going to the Memphis Comic-Con.
Cool.
So then San Antonio in October. So, there's plenty of chances to get to see me, and we can talk about Milestone stuff and everything else that the fans want to hit on.
That sounds great, man. Well, when season 2 is ready, I'll bug Michael and let's have another conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Dennis, truly appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I know my audience thanks you as well. So thanks a lot.
This has been great.
This portion of Word Balloon is brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Aftershock has it going on in August. In fact, a brand new series debuts in August, The Vineyard, from Brian Hawkins and Sammy Kivella. And this is a very cool supernatural murder kind of comic book that involves supernatural sacrifice and killing, all in the backdrop of a vineyard. Pretty crazy stuff. As they say, what wine goes best with murder? You'll find out in The Vineyard this month from Aftershock Comics. Also from Aftershock, we see the release of Baby Teeth Year 2, Cradle and Grave, the hardcover from Donny Cates and Gary Brown. The successful series continues in hardback, and it's available this month. Also, Volume 2 of Maniac in New York, The Bronx is Burning, another fantastic story from Elliot Callan and Andrea Muti. Really great stuff. The Bronx is Burning, Maniac of New York, Volume 2. Don't forget, for more details on this and other Aftershock creations, go to their website. You will find full story details, preview pages of art, and the diamond codes how to order these books and more at AftershockComics.com. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Coming up in the later part of the summer or early fall, from Abrams and Marvel, it's Fantastic Four, Full Circle, written and illustrated by Alex Ross. It's a rainy night in Manhattan. Not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system, but why? Fantastic Four has no choice but to journey into the negative zone. Great story, great creator, as you know, Alex Ross. Really excited for this project. He's been working on it for a really long time. And, man, you are in for some spectacular images. And if you want to get a preview for this, all you need to do is go to Alex's website, AlexRossArt.com. It's there also, as always, amazing paintings, sketches, lithographs, posters, every price point, epic images. You know the name. Check it out, AlexRossArt.com. Word Balloon is brought to you by my listeners. You are the sponsors of Word Balloon, the League of Word Balloon listeners, via subscriptions monthly to Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Hey, couldn't do it without you, honestly, League. I truly appreciate your support. I appreciate your devotion, your listenership, and your patronage, honestly. If you can even spare $1 a month, it's greatly appreciated. It helps me make these terrific shows, go to conventions where I'm not sponsored, and, keep networking and making interesting programming, hopefully for you to enjoy every month here on Word Balloon. But I couldn't do it without you. Thank you very much, League of Word Balloon listeners. Again, if you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, for as little as $1 a month, all you need to do is go to patreon.com/wordballoon, WORDBALLOON. And again, I really appreciate your patronage, subscription, and attention, all of you, the League of Word Balloon listeners. Until next time, thanks a lot for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2022. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.